The strongest character debate is something that most people don't think about as far as something that's actively in the community as a debate topic. With the term being thrown around in different debates so much, I wanted to do a dive into every contender for the top 1 spot in One Piece. This video is going to go over every character in the series, so you can essentially consider this a top 1 of all time. This will only go over characters you've seen currently in the story, so end of series versions are not included. So without further ado, let's get into it and see who are the contenders for the strongest of all time. Just like my final antagonist candidates video, I will be playing devil's advocate for every character, making arguments for each of their validity as top 1 of all time. So don't cook me too hard in the comments, as most of these aren't my own arguments. I will be letting you guys know at the end of the video my own personal top 1, so if you're interested, stay tuned. First up, we're gonna have Roger. The reason I placed Roger on the list despite Whitebeard having the world's strongest man statement is that the world's strongest man statement could be in reference to his devil fruit and not physical power. The Gura Gura no Mi is a fruit that can destroy the world and is widely considered one of, if not the most powerful devil fruit. Blackbeard in Marineford implies, and now he's gotten it, he's the strongest man, which could lead to the thought that although Roger and Whitebeard clash equally quite often, and Roger possibly leaving scars on Whitebeard, he could have edged him out as a title man because of his devil fruit. Roger's constantly portrayed to be one of the pinnacles of piracy, with Kaido and Big Mom praising his dominance on numerous occasions, and his apprentice Shanks now using his techniques and moveset to dominate the world currently. Roger has the portrayal through being the Pirate King, which although isn't a strength-based title, is something that proves he has dominated every pirate in his generation in one way, and seeing as he was so dominant during his lifetime, it lends to the idea that he was the strongest pirate during his era. Couple this with the fact that he possibly took Rocks down in a battle on God Valley, as although it is implied that he worked together with Garp, it is not explicitly stated that they were in a 2v1, meaning it's quite possible that Roger has been the strongest pirate for a few decades. Roger being the strongest of all time would then give more credence to Luffy surpassing him and then becoming the strongest of all time in the story at the end of the series, as he directly parallels Roger on numerous occasions. Roger also possibly having some of the greatest conqueror's haki, as he has been using the advanced applications of it for decades at the point of his death, and Shanks, who has now shown the greatest proficiency in it, could possibly just be recreating things he's seen Roger do, which only further lends to the idea that Roger may be a contender for the strongest of all time. On the other half of the old era pirate scale, we have Rocks. Rocks D. Xebec is someone whose Oda is going out of his way to show as a dominant figure power-wise. Almost all of Rocks' current feats have been based on strength, from him killing a Navy admiral with almost no damage, clashing equally with the strongest giant we've currently seen in the story, not only Harold being an ancient giant that's close to the size of Oars, but also him being an advanced conqueror's haki user, with their clash destroying everything in a 5-kilometer radius, which is the most physically destructive clash of conquerors we've seen to date. Couple this with the fact that he would have either beaten everyone in his crew with a Davy back, or just been so strong that he inspired them to follow him naturally. It definitely has a great argument for him being the strongest of all time. Rocks has some of the greatest feats we have seen in the series for a character that just got their face revealed about 3 to 4 chapters ago. Rocks has also been stated to be Roger's strongest adversary, which would include both Garp and Whitebeard, both of whom have fought Roger to almost life-ending matchups numerous times, implying that he probably was still dominant over Roger until the day he died. This lends to the idea that he was 2v1 on God Valley, as Garp only came there for Roger, so it makes no sense why he would let Roger and Rocks fight while he handles other people that he didn't come there for. Rocks being the strongest of all time currently would then lead to him being surpassed by Blackbeard and then by Luffy, both who will have arguments for being the strongest contender in the future of the story, as they're the two most narratively important pirates. Xebec definitely has a great argument for being the strongest, especially with all of his feats considered. Next up, I have Emu. Emu hasn't shown us very much by the way of feats, but his portrayal is by far the best in the story right now. With him possibly being the final villain of the story, he's bound to be a monster in his own right, having conqueror's haki that can be felt all the way from Elbaf's underworld, which is a massive distance between where the Sun Realm is and where the underworld is. Not only that, but also him using conqueror's haki when he's not even physically there through Gunko, implying that he may actually have even stronger conqueror's haki when he himself is using it. With all the Gorosei possibly just using Emu's abilities as well, it's likely that all of their conqueror's hakis is just residuals that Emu gave them, which would make his conqueror's haki some of the greatest we've seen in the story. Not only this, but his sword in the Flower Room lends to the idea that he was a fighter as well, as he would have fought in the Void Century War, and him possibly having a devil fruit similar to a mythical Zoan means he could also up his physical power and durability to insane degrees. Emu being the top 1 contender would then give Luffy a pathway to defeat him and then take his spot, which is something that's very important to the story. Luffy, by being the main character, is on the trajectory to be the greatest pirate of all time and the strongest character we've seen in the series. So by being somebody that you can easily have a line for Luffy to surpass, does end up boosting your argument for being the strongest of all time if the portrayal and the conflict is there. Speaking on conflict and portrayal, we now have Shanks. Shanks also has some crazy portrayal, with him casually stopping Kaido, the world's strongest creature, being stated to be a rival to Mihawk, the world's strongest swordsman, and having an equal clash with Whitebeard, the world's strongest man, as well as Big Mom saying that if she had the giants on her side, that she could have even beat Red-Haired, implying that she can't take him out herself as Shanks' fleet is notoriously awful, with only his main crew being powerful. Shanks has by far the best technical usage of Conqueror's Haki we've seen, with him being able to transmit his Haki from the outside oceans of Wano to deep in the mainland, which is an absolutely crazy distance, possibly even bigger than what was felt from Imu. Not only that, but he was also able to paralyze a Navy Admiral in the process, which is much more than we've seen Imu do so far. Shanks' mastery of Haki goes beyond anything currently shown in the story, and with him being the first character that was introduced besides Roger, it just shows us that he's an important figure to Oda. Speaking on Roger, it's only natural that the apprentice surpasses the one who taught them, as that's a common trope in One Piece, with a new generation always going further and farther than the previous one did. Shanks picking up moves from Roger implies that he possibly has had more time to improve on those moves as well, as he would have been training these attacks for a long time. Shanks is set up to be a match for Luffy in strength, as the whole reason Luffy started sailing was so that he could prove he's a better pirate than Shanks. While I don't think Luffy and Shanks' fight will happen at the end of the series, it's quite possible Luffy becomes the strongest character and has his final battles afterwards. Being the strongest doesn't necessarily mean you can beat everyone with ease, so it is possible for Luffy to have hard battles after beating Shanks and then becoming the strongest. Shanks' argument for the top 1 spot is not as strong as the others, but it's definitely still there. And as always, we can't ever talk about Shanks without also bringing up Mihawk. Mihawk's title is that of the world's greatest swordsman, and just like Shanks, he was also introduced very early in the story, with the absolute weight of his strength being mentioned by every character who speaks about him. Mihawk has done something with armament Haki that has literally only ever been replicated once over 400 years, which is creating a black blade. Mihawk was considered a notorious swordsman even during the time that Roger was alive, meaning he's been in the fighting game for many years. Black blades, while not being explained as of yet, are implied to be forged through many hard battles, meaning that Mihawk forging his blade black shows that he has definitely beaten his fair share of strong opponents, as whatever Zoro has done in the story currently would still not compare to the battles that Mihawk has fought to create his black blade, as Zoro has not yet turned any of his blades black. Any swordsman currently shown should be inferior to Mihawk no matter to what degree, and with Haki skill being something that is getting more and more importance through Shanks and Gabon, it is only natural to assume that Mihawk, being not only the strongest but most skilled swordsman, should have some of the best applications of it we've seen. With Shanks and Zoro both possessing Conqueror's Haki, it's only natural to assume that Mihawk would possess it as well, and if you truly believe he doesn't have it, that would only make him more dominant, as he's able to do everything he does currently without having Conqueror's Haki. Mihawk not only has an argument for the strongest swordsman currently, but also possibly even the strongest swordsman of all time, as he is Zoro's endgame matchup, and as with most shonen, the main characters do end up becoming the strongest ever at what it is they're chasing. Since so many of the strongest characters in One Piece are sword users, Mihawk being the strongest swordsman not only alive but currently in history would also naturally place him at the top 1 spot currently, with Zoro then surpassing him while still being inferior to Luffy by the end of the series. Now coming to the end of the video, I have 3 more contenders left to speak on. Unlike the previous characters I've spoken about, 2 aren't swordsmen, and 1 is implied to have a sword fighting ability but not be a sword only fighter. First on the list is going to be Nika. Nika is someone we know almost nothing about, but seeing as he is literally the person that inspired the devil fruit that both Luffy and Joy Boy possess, it's only natural that he's going to be a complete powerhouse. The Nika fruit grants almost complete dominance in every fight, as you're essentially bending the world to your will, and just using the fruit exudes Conqueror's Haki to an immense degree, as Luffy simply transforming into the awakened version of it for the first time was able to split the sky, a feat only ever performed by 2 Conqueror's Haki users clashing. The fact Nika had all these abilities without the devil fruit because he couldn't have eaten the devil fruit based on himself if he was still alive goes to show that he's quite possibly the greatest power of all time. Since we don't know very much about Nika, it's very hard to make an argument for him, but based on his portrayal and based on the things that we've seen, especially in the mural, Nika should have been a powerhouse in his own right as well. Now next up is going to be Joy Boy. Joy Boy is someone we have seen a lot more feats from compared to Nika, and when I say he has feats, I mean he has feats. Some of the things Joy Boy has done puts characters like Shanks and Rocks to shame. Joy Boy has the greatest pure power Conqueror's Haki feat we've seen, with Haki that he tied into a knot being able to disintegrate the 5 elders and send them back to Marijoa, as well as have Imu shaking and convulsing on the ground like he's having a seizure, implying that either the blast was so strong Imu could feel the residuals through the Gorosei from Egghead and react in a way worse than how Shanks had Green Bull react, or that Joy Boy dominated Imu so hard in the past that simply feeling his Haki again was giving Imu Void Century War flashbacks. Speaking of the Void Century War, it's almost literally shown to us that Joy Boy 20v1 the kings, as we see him in Gear 5th lightning in hand ready to square up with a group of figures wearing crowns, which, as crazy as it seems considering Imu is one of those kings, doesn't even really seem crazy at all if that's how Joy Boy's Haki had Imu reacting. Joy Boy essentially also little boyed E-Myth, treating him like Luffy treats Chopper, and E-Myth literally knocked the taste out of Warcury's mouth. Someone who Luffy couldn't even make budge, just going to show that Joy Boy is an absolute monster and quite possibly the best contender for the top 1 spot with what little we know about him. And he's also also not a swordsman, so no Mihawk upscale. And now last on the list is going to be someone you could already guess based on the previous two and what I said earlier. Luffy being top 1 in the story currently is not as crazy as it might seem due to one important thing being stamina. Gear 5 stamina is the only thing holding it back from absolutely steamrolling everyone it fights with, and Luffy says that he's also reached his peak when he first attained the form and then goes on to absolutely demolish Kaido, overpowering his strongest attack while being fatigued, dying not even an hour before that, and then restarting his heart again shortly afterwards. He then goes on to body Kizaru, which, although he might have been nerfed during that fight, he still sunned one of the strongest and fastest figures in One Piece, showing dominance the whole time. Luffy in Gear 5th being the strongest of all time and stronger than both Joy Boy and Nika works because Luffy right now will only gain technical knowledge and stamina increases, not actual power increases. Luffy's Bajran gun on Onigashima shows us the kind of power he packs when he's serious, as he coated a fist bigger than Onigashima entirely in Conqueror's Haki, which is the most vast application of the ability that we will probably ever see. And that was a fatigued 5th round Luffy. A full HP all-out serious Gear 5 would wash 99% of the verse, with only the absolute strongest top of the top characters being able to challenge him in a fight. If Luffy locks into the fight and starts getting his stamina up like he did with Gear 4th, which again let me remind you would be a skill and mastery buff not a strength one, he would then have utter dominance over the entire verse completely. We must also always remember that strength and skill are not directly correlated 100% of the time. Luffy can be the strongest and still lose or struggle due to his own personality and the fact that he may not be able to fight for as long as he wants to. This wouldn't make him not the strongest, it would just be Oda writing the story in a way that doesn't allow Luffy to dominate the whole verse immediately. He literally says that he doesn't like Luffy winning every fight easily and acknowledges that he low-key should be able to because he's so powerful. That's why the one limit Oda consistently goes back to whenever he wants to nerf Luffy is a stamina limit. So although Luffy may not look like he should be the most dominant figure in One Piece of all time currently, it's very possible that he is due to the fact that he may only be getting minor increases from now until the end of the story. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I really wanted to do another Devil's Advocate video just like the final antagonist one because I actually like seeing arguments from every side. Most of the arguments I use in the video are arguments for people that I've debated through starting this channel, so this video is essentially just the arguments you've given me that I thought were atrocious at first, but now after using them myself, they seem less outlandish, which is something I think that the agenda piece community needs to do more of. Personally, and I'm sure you could already tell from the way I spoke, I believe Joy Boy is currently the strongest character of all time, as I think he was jumped when he lost and he still put up a good fight. But what do you guys think? Who in your opinion is the strongest character of all time? If you stuck around to the end of the video, drop a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks again for 300 subs. You guys are absolutely blowing this channel up as far as I'm concerned, and I'm glad to be able to build a community that I can share One Piece with again. See you all in the next video. Peace.